but there's a breeze.
Good.
Morning, Brent.
Hi, Betty, John, Dave.
Morning, Brett.
Morning, Lynn.
Chip.
Morning, Chip.
Good morning.
Morning.
Morning, Chip.
Morning, Chip. Morning, John and Betty.
Morning, Lynn.
Morning,
John
Dave.
looks like it's winter out. He's got his suit coat on even.
He always
heat.
wears his suit coat.
Unless I get too drippy. If I get too drippy, I'll take it off.
People on if you want to join.
Okay.
We've been cutting out on you lately, early, because Mooresville's open now for worship.
Sure. Well, we're just happy you join us at all.
Anna Mae Wong may join our meeting. She's really gotten interested in what's going on the computer.
Your voice is breaking off.
Yeah, you broke up, Chip. Now we can't hear you at all.
Morning, Sue.
Good morning.
Morning, Norma.
Good morning, everyone.
Oh, well.
Morning, Norma.
Good morning.
Yeah. I usually don't have my coat on this time. Figured I better get everything rounded up.
Dave,
Steve, I got your mail.
That's good, Sue.
Sounds like the Postal Service is working.
I think it works okay if it's regular envelopes rather than just something a little larger or something.
Right. Well, I still haven't gotten my second stimulus check yet, so I'm still waiting on that. Maybe it's so big, it like you're talking about, it takes a long time to come through the mail.
That could very well be.
They'll hand it to you when you vote.
There you go.
Depending on how you vote now, Dan, you know how
That's right.
I must be voting the wrong way. I haven't gotten my first one yet.
That's what I was thinking. I haven't received the first one yet.
Well, after the meeting's over, call me and I'll tell you how you can get it. Tell you the right way to vote.
Good morning.
Morning, Chantel. Morning, Caroline. Morning, Dan.
Good morning.
Both Dans.
Hi, Christy.
Christy and Chris.
Have we decided to go back to the meeting house yet?
We haven't. Ministry and council needs to get together sometime the next week or so and make that decision.
Okay.
I go twice a week and I'm still alive, Dan, so.
Well, you go alone, right?
And he doesn't have COVID from going to the meeting house, so that's good.
That's valid. else. I mean, it would normally be.
Dan, do you have pretty weather in Iowa today?
Very pleasant here today.
Good.
Well, welcome all. We'll, it being time to start, you friends have concerns or joys to share before we center into worship?
Well, speaking of COVID, our nephew and niece who live here in town both have it. So they are quarantined at home with a 10-year-old and a 2-year-old. And they, I'm sure, could all use our prayers.
Our grandson Ashton's friends has it. He's a hairdresser. I don't know. He works at Great Clips. And despite all the precautions working there, he's like 23 and came down with it. So he's in quarantine. His name's Hudson.
Well, I find it a little heartening that even though the number of cases is going up, the ratio to the deaths is very low. This morning's paper, I think, said 817 new cases, but only 11 deaths. Maybe the tide is turning.
Lucky here, I think, that hospitalizations have stayed about the same compared to other parts of the country. Well, I'd invite you to put yourself on mute as we enter. So I'm the worship leader today, so when I feel led, I will speak out of the silence. Well, this weekend we've heard the news that John Lewis passed away, one of the great civil rights persons. And one of his quotes has been going around a lot on the internet. He said, never ever be afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble. That every time I read that, I thought of how he and Martin Luther King Jr. were students of the Quaker Bayard Rustin, as far as the value of nonviolent protest. And Bayard Rustin, the quote of Lewis is very similar to one that Rustin said years ago, which was that the world needs angelic troublemakers. So acknowledging Lewis just for a moment this morning, we might want to consider how we can be angelic troublemakers in good ways, agitating for that which is good trouble. There certainly seems to be much trouble in our world. I've been thinking about that a lot over this past week. For some reason, I've had a harder time staying up this week than I have in some of the others. I think it's, I heard an expression, the dark cloud of COVID hanging over us. And I thought, well, that's a pretty good analogy. I thought of Charlie Brown, a Peanuts cartoon, where there's just this little thing of rain that followed him around in one of the cartoons. You know, it just rained on him, and the depression, easy to, at least it's been easy for me to be more bewildered. We hear so much different information about what's going on in our world and with this sickness. I mean, there's unrest politically in cities across the U.S. still. Think of what's going on in Portland. Political unrest between the parties, you know, all the different memes that are on Facebook and Twitter that don't seem to do anything but agitate. And then, as I said, all the weight of COVID. And as I often do when I look for solace, I turn to poetry. And one of my poets, and I was thinking about him last night as I drifted off to sleep, is Wendell Berry. And when I got up this morning and flipped open my iPad to not check the news, but to just see email, in one of my email accounts from Plow's Daily Dig was one of my favorite Berry poems, and it goes like this. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the green heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting for their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. I've loved that poem for years, and I know now that one of my blessings in this life, which is a city boy I didn't think I'd ever have or necessarily wanted to have, was living in the country and being surrounded by nature. The presence of still water, the peace of wild things. And yet I have been watching more closely than ever, I guess, since March, the natural progression of things, of nature. The deer that in the early spring were waltzing through our yard, it seemed like, on a regular basis, and then joined by their fawns. Baby raccoons, which are cute to see as long as they stay out in the prairie. A skunk that now lives down in the woods and comes out to visit sometimes when we drive by just to check us out. The crops, the soybeans that Doug planted in the field next to us are luxuriant. And I began to think, well, you know, nature does not seem to be bothered in near the same way that we humans are. Not fretful, not all concerned. I was looking, I remembered a title today, When Bad Things Happen to Good People, which was a popular book. You know, we are always wondering, well, what about this grief that comes to us? Why this? Why me? Why do bad things happen? I even found a children's book that was When Bad Things Happen, a guide to help kids cope. So we even, you know, it seems like coping is something even younger people have to do. But I couldn't find any. I came up with two other titles that I couldn't find. One was When Bad Things Happen to Good Plants. And the other was When Bad Things Happen, a guide to help birds cope. They all seem to be coping. And I thought of some scripture. The first is from Psalms 98. Let the sea resound and everything in it, the world and all who live in it. Let the rivers clap their hands. Let the mountains sing together for joy. Now, I am not a biblical literalist per se, so I know those are metaphorical images, and yet I wonder how much truth is in them. Is the sea making a joyful noise? Are the trees, as I'm looking today and the wind blowing through them, clapping their hands for the glory of God? And then in Isaiah, I also read, come all ye who are thirsty, come to the waters. And you who have no money, come and buy and eat. Come, buy wine and milk without money and without cost. Why spend money on that which is not bread, and your labor on that which does not satisfy? Listen to me and eat what's good, and I will give you the richest of fare. Give ear and come to me. Listen, that you may live. I will make an everlasting covenant with you. You will go out in joy and be led in peace. The mountains and the hills will burst into song before you, and all the trees of the field will clap their hands. That's from Isaiah 55. And I begin to think then, in whom do I trust? Once again, I want to trust in my own understanding. I want to trust in the understanding of those who are wiser in various areas than I. And yet there is still an unsettledness until I learn to trust in him who loves me more than I know. And I often forget that. It's not that the world isn't dangerous. We know it certainly is. It's not that there's not going to be grief. There certainly is. It's not that there's not going to be hardship. There certainly is. Even plants and birds and foxes and skunks know hardship. Yet the animal and plant kingdom seem to know their place better than I do sometimes. And I need to remember that my place is to trust in God, who is guaranteed to bring me safe to the end of my journey. Not uninjured along the way necessarily, but at the end, the eternal ollie ollie in free, the come home, and who promises to walk along beside me in joy and in sorrow. And I'm finding comfort in those thoughts this morning, in not worrying about who I am, but in remembering whose I am. I'm a beloved child of God, as are we all. Another one of my favorite poets is Julie Cadwallader Staub, who she and her husband were at Earlham when I was there. She has a new book of poems out, well, fairly new, called Wing Over Wing. And as I was looking through it, again, just like Wendell Berry's poem popped up, so did this one called Trees by Julie. And it's dedicated to Eves and Iola Cadwallader, her in-laws, who planted over 4,000 trees in their lifetime, she writes at the beginning. Trees. Let me learn the language of trees. The patient and probing register of roots in summer. There are 1,000 words for thirst, for texture, for search. Let me learn the cadence that carries wordless sustenance from tendril beneath to trunk, to limb to leaf. Let me learn the long and laughing language of leaves. There are 1,000 words for wind and light, the sound of raindrops through the night. Let me learn this language of trees. The better to pray, the better to praise. May we, like the trees, remember to whom we belong and rest in that knowledge.
Brent earlier mentioned the passing of John Lewis, a person who had a tremendous effect in his lifetime and will continue to have an effect. One of his observations has stuck with me for a long time. Congressman Lewis said, while white people and black people may have come to America in different boats, we're all in the same boat now. No matter whether you're black or white or brown or someplace in between, no matter whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, an independent, or just angelically mischievous, we've got to learn to live together. We've got to learn not to talk past one another, but to talk to one another and carefully listen to what the other side is saying. Because if we don't, we're going to continue to struggle as a society, as a country, and as individuals. And I think Congressman Lewis's observation that we're all in the same boat together really resonates with me today as I consider the problems that our society and our country are facing at this point. And it's my prayer that we can figure out a way to really listen to one another and understand each other.
As we come to the close of our time, would remind friends that Western Yearly Meeting begins on Friday. Sylvia, would you like to say anything about the sessions? I don't know if Sylvia hears me. Deborah Seuss is one of our speakers. The Bible Hour, Colin Saxton is the Quaker lecturer. If folks need information about how to register or whatever, please let me know and I can send you the links. They're also on the Western Yearly Meeting website. Anybody else have anything to share before we leave?
About what you said, is it going to be by Zoom?
Yes, it's by Zoom.
Okay, thank you.
Well, have a good time at your yearly meeting.
I'm trying to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Next Sunday's worship service will be by Zoom, but I believe it's 10 o'clock through the Western Yearly Meeting devotional leader. Rather than the 9:30 time, it would be 10 o'clock next Sunday.
I'll send that information out.
Bill, do you have Brent, do you have my email?
I don't know that I do. Are you on Facebook?
Yes, you've messaged me there.
Okay, send me your email and I'll add you to the list.
Fabulous, thank you.
Okay.
Was my understanding that the Western work updates or whatever they're called now. We can get information for each of the different sessions from those minutes, so we can get on the Western Work website and get the information to link to all the different meetings that are happening.
I did send that out to everybody on our newsletter list, sent a copy of Western Work so that all the information went to people on our email list. So, well, have a blessed week, hopefully, and go in peace.